August 15th, 2021 started like any other summer day in Kabul, Afghanistan. The city woke up to the smells of spices and car exhaust, but something felt wrong. A sense of dread hung in the air. The Taliban, once a faraway threat, were now close. As the sun rose, rumors of the Taliban's advance spread through the city. People panicked. They rushed to take out their money from the banks and tried to escape. The Afghan government, weak and corrupt, couldn't do anything. By noon, the unthinkable happened. Kabul, the heart of Afghanistan, fell to the Taliban. President Ashraf Ghani and his government ran away, leaving the people to face an unknown future. It happened so fast. It showed how weak the Afghan government was and how strong the Taliban were. The fall of Kabul ended 20 years of trying to build a democracy, a project that cost the lives of thousands of American soldiers and many Afghan civilians. The Taliban flag now flew over the presidential palace. Fear and uncertainty filled the nation. Afghanistan was once again ruled by the Islamic Emirate. The world was shocked by how quickly the Taliban won. In just a few weeks, they took over the country, capturing cities easily. The Afghan army, trained and supplied by the United States for billions of dollars, barely fought back. They often ran away or surrendered. Several things led to the Afghan government's quick collapse. Corruption was everywhere in the government and military, weakening the country from the inside. The Afghan people, tired of war and disappointed in their leaders, didn't seem to want to fight anymore. Also, the Taliban had learned from their past. They used ethnic and tribal differences to weaken the government and gain support from local leaders. They also used clever propaganda, promising peace and stability after decades of war. The Afghan government's collapse showed that it's hard to build a nation, and that strong beliefs and willpower are powerful. It also showed the problems with the US plan in Afghanistan, which focused too much on fighting and not enough on fixing the political and social issues that caused the conflict. The fall of Kabul was a humiliating loss for the United States. After 20 years of war, trillions of dollars spent, and thousands of American lives lost, the Taliban were back in charge. The Biden administration, which inherited the war, was heavily criticized for how it handled the withdrawal. The US withdrawal from Afghanistan was messy and poorly planned. The Biden administration set August 31st as the deadline to leave, which many experts said was too soon and rushed. The Afghan government's sudden collapse surprised the US, forcing them to quickly evacuate American citizens and Afghan allies. As the Taliban got closer to Kabul, the US military secured Hamid Karzai International Airport, the only way out for thousands of desperate Afghans. The airport was filled with heartbreaking chaos. Crowds of people, many who had risked their lives to help the US, begged to get on planes. The US evacuated over 120,000 people, but it was a tragic and difficult process. On August 26th, a suicide bomber attacked the airport, killing 13 US soldiers and over 170 Afghan civilians. This attack showed how dangerous the evacuation was and the human cost of the US withdrawal. When Kabul fell, thousands of Afghans who had worked with the US and its allies, and those who feared the Taliban, desperately tried to escape. Hamid Karzai International Airport was a scene of total chaos. Huge crowds of scared and desperate people pushed against the airport gates, hoping for a miracle. Families were separated in the chaos, mothers from children, husbands from wives. Some lucky people managed to get onto crowded military planes, leaving their homes, belongings and lives behind. Others weren't so lucky and were left behind, facing an uncertain future. The air was filled with the smell of sweat, fear and despair. Gunshots rang out as Taliban fighters, overwhelmed by the crowd, shot into the air trying to control the chaos. It was incredibly hot, and there wasn't enough food or water. The images from Kabul airport shocked the world. They showed the terrible human cost of war and the desperation of those caught in the middle. Even though thousands were flown to safety, the evacuation left a permanent mark on the world's conscience. Section 5. Life under the Taliban, a return to repression. 2 years after the Taliban takeover, Afghanistan is a humanitarian and human rights disaster. The Taliban's promises to be moderate and inclusive were lies. The country has gone back to a dark time of oppression and fear. The Taliban enforced their strict version of Islamic law. taking away freedoms from Afghans, especially women and girls. Women can't go to school, have jobs, or be in public life. They have to wear burqas, which cover them from head to toe, and they can't travel without a man. The Taliban also don't allow free speech. They shut down news outlets and arrest journalists who criticize them. The justice system is unfair and cruel, with reports of killings, torture, and people disappearing. Section 6. Women's rights under siege, a grim reality. The Taliban's return has been especially terrible for Afghan women and girls. They were once symbols of progress and hope, but now they are hidden, their dreams broken, and their futures uncertain. The progress made in women's rights over 20 years is gone. The Taliban believe women are less important than men, denying them basic human rights and freedoms. Girls over 12 can't go to school, losing their chance to learn and grow. Women can't have most jobs, making them poorer and more dependent on others. Women who disobey the Taliban's harsh rules are punished quickly and cruelly. Public whippings, beatings, and even executions are common, creating fear and silencing anyone who disagrees. The world has condemned the Taliban's treatment of women, but they don't listen. Stopping women's rights isn't just wrong, it's also dangerous. By not allowing half of its population to contribute to society, Afghanistan is dooming itself to poverty, ignorance, and instability. Section 7. A nation in crisis, hunger and despair grip Afghanistan. Afghanistan is facing a huge humanitarian crisis. Years of fighting, drought, a failing economy, and the Taliban's harsh rules have created chaos. The United Nations says over 28 million Afghans, more than 2/3 of the population, need help to survive. Many people are starving, hospitals are full of malnourished children, the healthcare system is failing without enough medicine or trained staff. The Taliban's takeover has made the economy worse. International sanctions and frozen Afghan money have made the country poorer. Banks aren't working. Many people don't have jobs, and the prices of basic things have gone way up. The world has promised billions of dollars in aid, but getting it to the people who need it is hard. The Taliban control the country, and there's no real government, so it's difficult to make sure the aid gets to the right people. Section 8. The world's response, a fractured international community. The world's response to the crisis in Afghanistan has been mixed. Many countries condemn the Taliban's human rights abuses and are worried about the humanitarian situation, but they don't agree on how to deal with the Taliban or fix the country's problems. The United States, which is partly responsible for the situation, has frozen billions of dollars of Afghan money and placed sanctions on the Taliban. But the US has also given billions in humanitarian aid, sending it through international groups instead of directly to the Taliban. Other countries are waiting to see what happens. They don't want to recognize the Taliban government or give direct help until things improve with human rights. The Taliban refuse to create an inclusive government. They punish anyone who disagrees with them, and they still have connections to terrorist groups. This makes it hard for other countries to work with them. Because the world isn't united in its response, it's harder to fix the crisis. The Taliban see this disunity and refuse to change their ways or make compromises. While the world hesitates, things in Afghanistan keep getting worse, and regular Afghans suffer the most. Section 9. The future of Afghanistan. Uncertainty and fear prevail. 2 years after the Taliban takeover, Afghanistan's future is still uncertain and scary. The country is at a turning point. The Taliban's victory makes us think about how to build nations, the limits of using military force, and the West's responsibility to the Afghan people. The Taliban promised peace and stability after decades of war. But their cruel rule, their harsh beliefs, and their ties to terrorists suggest otherwise. The Afghan people, who have suffered so much, face an unknown future. The world has a duty to help them. This means giving aid to ease their suffering, pushing the Taliban to respect human rights, and supporting the Afghan people's hopes for a better future. It will be a long and difficult road, but the world can't ignore Afghanistan. Too much is at stake, and the consequences of doing nothing are too terrible. The people of Afghanistan deserve our full support.